Today, we've got listener favorite guest Cara back to tell us how she came close to having to shut down her business since she wasn't looking at the right metrics, but she's going to show us how she was not only able to save her company, but grow it. How cool is that? Pretty cool, I think. Are you a 6, 7, or 8-figure seller and want to network in a private mastermind group with other experienced sellers? Or maybe you want to take advantage of monthly advanced training sessions with Kevin King, an expert guest. Do you want to come to our quarterly in-person all-day trainings at Helium 10 headquarters? Or do you want the widest access to the Helium 10 set of tools? For all of these things, the Elite program might be for you. For more information on Helium 10 Elite, go to h10.me/elite. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Serious Sellers Podcast by Helium 10. I am your host, Bradley Sutton, and this is the show that's a completely BS-free, unscripted, and unrehearsed, organic conversation about serious strategies for serious sellers of any level in the e-commerce world. And to continue in my series of me being on the other side of the world here in Germany, the next guest that we recorded here in Frankfurt is none other than the amazing Cara. Welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you, gorgeous one. Thank you for having me.
This is actually the 4th time, believe it or not.
I think am I approaching a world record for the most interviewed person?
You're in the select top 5% of people who have made it to 4 episodes.
There you go.
That's amazing. So we're not going to go too much into her backstory. Mel here prepared some of the numbers where she's on. So if you want to find out her origin story, that's episode 117. She came back on episode 246 and we were talking pandemic stuff. And then most recently, back in 2022, she was on episode 378. And that was interesting, talking about some of her struggles that she started seeing with her business. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
But more struggles.
Hey, we keep it real on the podcast. But before we get into the serious stuff,
okay.
Every time Cara's on the episode, she teaches me a little bit more of British English. All right. And I'm sure it's going to come out like the way she talks, she always says stuff that I'm like, what did you say? So we're all going to learn some more British slang here. My first question is, wait, what is this one phrase?
There was a piffling.
Piffling, that was something.
Yeah, so we were talking about something. I said, oh, that's just piffling. And piffling is when something's really inconsequential. So it's just like so little. It's like a piffling thing. Okay. And then the other one was put some welly into it.
Put some welly into it.
So which is, I suppose a translation would be put some oomph into it.
Okay, put some oomph in it. All right. By the way, I'm wearing my The Office t-shirt, Dunder Mifflin here, because, that's one of our exports that we got from Britain is The Office, one of our most popular shows. I know how it's used, but when people say Bob's your uncle, where does that come from though? That's the most ridiculous phrase I've ever heard. Bob's your uncle. How does that
I actually have no clue. This is half the problem. So when I talk, a lot of the time I'll use these phrases and I have no clue. I haven't got a Scooby's where it came from, and that was one. And I thought maybe that had something to do with Scooby-Doo, but apparently it doesn't, because I Googled it last night and it's got something to do with a Scottish word that's got to do with Scooby or something. So that's the thing, is a lot of these things I have, and in fact, what was the other one? There's one, it'll come back to me, but there's one that I use quite a lot, and I actually had to Google it and it turned out it was something to do with an Australian runner or something. Oh, Gordon Bennett. That's right, Gordon Bennett. Have you ever heard of that one?
I have not.
Okay, so Gordon Bennett, when something goes wrong, instead of being really rude and throwing out an F word, you go, oh, Gordon Bennett. And I was like, well, who is Gordon Bennett? Why do we say him? And I'm quite interested in these things. And I think he was either an Australian pilot or an Australian runner or something like that. I have no clue why we use it, but we do. And I say it quite a lot.
Now, the first, how I roll here. I usually don't like trying to get our topics before. I don't really think about it. But, we went out to dinner last night and you were talking a little bit about some of your struggles and how you were taking one aspect of your total business and were kind of like not giving it the attention it needed. And then when you actually did, you were just like, wow, I'm in such bad shape. Why have to shut the business? So talk about what you were neglecting, how you put a stop to that neglect, and then the steps that you took to rectify the situation?
Okay. So I think a lot of it comes from the fact that when I started my business, I had no clue what I was doing. And I suppose a lot of Amazon sellers are like that, in that you just sort of go, yeah, this sounds like a good idea, so I'm going to start running a business. And I used to work in a corporate environment and had budgets and all various other things. But in my own business, I didn't. I just kind of ran a lot like the seat of my pants. And I think maybe that's just because also I'm more of an intuitive person versus a data-driven person. Whereas I know a lot of Amazon sellers are very data-driven and maybe less intuitive, as in like everyone has different skill sets. And I think what happened was the business grew and grew and grew. And I basically broke my own golden rule, which is that at the end of the day, the whole thing about turnover is vanity and profit is sanity. So what I was doing is I was just looking at the big numbers and not really focusing on the small numbers. And I sort of came to a point in July where I realised that basically what happened was I used to use the software Sage for my accounts, and I knew Sage inside and out. And then I changed accountants and they started to use Xero, and I didn't know it as well. So if I'm honest, I should have been more involved, but I just kind of let them like run it. And so when I went to look at my accounts, I was like, oh God, I don't seem to have made very much money. I've got really quite a good turnover, but I haven't actually made much profit. I'm thinking, like, what am I going to do? So I started looking into it in much more depth. So first of all, what I did, and I would suggest every Amazon seller does this, or to be honest, as you know, I don't really talk about Amazon sellers. I talk about businesses and brands, but every company that is selling products, you 100% need to really make sure that your profit and loss, your P&L, reflects what you're doing. So mine was literally sales, pretty much, as a big picture. Well, I sell in 4 countries. I've got 4 websites, 4 marketplaces. I've also got retailers and distributors and various other things. So to have all of my sales information in one place was a bit stupid, frankly, because how am I going to get any clarity on what's doing well, what's not doing so well? And pretty much all my costs, like all my Amazon costs, were all bunched in one place. And yes, I could have separated them out if I'd done it like by area, but actually I then had an issue with my bookkeeping, and so actually it turned out that hadn't been done properly. So I wouldn't have been able to do that. So I then separated my costs out. So again, I had like 8 different cost centers not 8 different cost centers, sorry, I did 4 different cost centers, but by country. So I could at least see what I was making in terms of turnover and then see what the costs were for those countries, looking at a lot of detail. And then I started looking, then I went into, and this is a really, really super useful, and I don't think, I certainly hadn't used it before, the SKU economics level of reporting, where, I mean, obviously it's easy for me because I've got only 13 SKUs, and I know I've spoken to people today and they're like 2,500, but you can actually see, although it would be really good if Amazon could do, or actually I don't think Helium 10 does it, do they? Like an ability to export SKU economics reports.
Oh, I don't know what SKU economics means.
I mean, my God, right. Well, in which case, I'm giving you a whole new thing that Helium 10 1,000%.
I mean, I probably do it, but I just don't call it that.
But it's called SKU economics. There's no other. Right. So basically, I saw it for the first time on the app because I'm quite a regular app checker. Okay. So I go in and I have a look, and it's in the manage inventory. You go to the SKU, and then on the top, it's got pricing and this, that, the other. And then it says SKU economics. And you can
You're talking about Seller Central.
This is Seller Central. Yeah, sorry. Do translate. So I go to SKU economics, and basically you can do it like the last 7 days, last 30 days, last 6 months, last 12 months. And it's the only place I've ever seen where you can literally see what your total sales are, what your net sales are, what your Amazon costs are. And they break it down to a level of detail where it's literally like you've spent this amount on a deal coupon code, this amount on your sponsored profit by SKU.
Okay, yes, okay. Helium 10 has that. We don't call it SKU economics, but it's just in profits, you go to your product performance, and then you could look at it at the ASIN level, or you could look at the SKU level.
Okay, well, you need to show me how to do that then.
Okay, we'll do.
Okay, but I did this myself, just went in.
Sure.
And then I started transporting all the information over, and then I broke it down by country, and I started looking, and I realised that actually, like in Canada, when you actually put in the cost of my product, excluding shipping in or any other costs I had running a business in Canada, I was pretty much not even breaking even. And then I started looking at the US, and I was like, oh shit, same thing, not good. UK really healthy, Australia healthy. But at the time I was, before I did all the analysis, and there was a lot of work to do on it, I was literally like, oh my God, I think I'm going to just have to shut up shop, because I've got an issue with the Chinese sellers who I think were impacting before, but they're really kicking off now, because obviously my product was launched over 10 years ago, so they know there's no patent on that product, therefore they can go for it. So at the moment they're selling the product that looks like mine. It is not the same, but it looks similar enough to the consumer for $5. Well, it cost me $25 to manufacture the thing. They're selling them for $25 on Amazon, and I can't compete. Now, I don't want to compete, but the issue is what it's done. And again, this is where I wasn't paying attention and should have pulled myself up sooner. I didn't see the huge drop in the sales, and therefore my storage costs at 3PL level have gone up hugely, and therefore I'm got huge big overheads on the fact that I've got all this stock and it's not selling. And if I sell it at too low a price, then I'm not going to break even at all. So anyway, I started doing a whole lot of analysis, and I've probably had my head in spreadsheets for close to 4 months, something like that. But I tell you what, once you've done that sort of work, the clarity you have and the decisions you can make. So, for example, I actually decided, normally I'm all about trying to give my customers the most range possible, the widest. And I'm like, excuse my French, fuck that, right? Literally, I'm just going to give them this product, this product, this product, this product. You don't need the variations, right? Because the variations are costing me extra. They often get returned because they maybe buy the wrong one thinking they didn't realize it had a pink trim, and they bought that one. So I'm like, actually, that one I know they'll like. They either have that one or nothing. And so that's now my approach. And then the other thing I was doing as well is looking more into the keywords, and looking more into making sure that the listing was actually really reflecting the keywords that are out there. So I was doing a lot of Helium 10 research into that, and actually being updating the listings. So they'd probably been around, one of them particularly had been around for about 2 or 3 years, and I probably hadn't really ever done that much work on it. And already I only updated it middle of December. It's not my peak season, and I can see the sales coming up, and that's from literally looking at what are the terms that we should be using,
because it changes over time.
It can change.
It's the same product, but the how people find it or searching for it could change over time.
Exactly. And also, I do have a tendency to kind of invent keywords as well. So words that I use in my speech and also in my listings. So I find that things there are certain keywords that I use in my listings that, because people are copying my listings, they're copying my wording, and therefore then that wording is then getting picked up in brand analytics, etc. So it's quite fascinating. But the thing is at the end of the day, I think it does, I'm all about the marketing, I'm all about the intuition, but also you have to be about the data as well, and the numbers. And, there's a difference between taking a risk and investing in something that your business needs in order to grow, versus just sort of sitting there and maybe not paying attention to what you shouldn't really be spending. Yeah. And that's what I was doing. So bad me.
So, instead of having to shut down the whole business, you were able to, maybe shut down some unprofitable SKUs.
Yeah, so I shut down Canada.
Shut down, marketplaces. And that might be a scary thing. Some people, they go to extremes. They're like, I'm just going to quit everything, and that's not good. Or they're like, no, I have to succeed in Canada. I know it can work despite all the numbers. Screw the numbers. I'm going to make this work. You gotta be able to not easily give up, but at the same time understand that you have battles, or if you want to win the war, you might need to and
also it doesn't always have to be permanent. That's the other thing, right? So just because I've shut Canada down for now doesn't mean I can't come back to Canada. But right now the numbers don't work in terms of getting the product over there, the various other things that are there, the pricing structures, etc., the percentage of the particular products that will sell and the ones that won't. I literally just was like, no, okay, that doesn't make sense. And like you say, there is a bit of ego in there, in terms of I sell on, 4 marketplaces. Well, who cares? If you're not making money, don't sell on any, So I did, and then I actually had a chat. The reason I was going to shut the US down is I had a chat with another friend of mine who she'd exited a business, an 8-figure business, and she was saying the US is really tough, and particularly because Amazon are doing all this now, penalizing you for not having enough inventory, as well as penalizing you for having too much. And it's God, Gordon Bennett, like, give us a break, right? Seriously, give us a break. And I was like, do you know what? The thing is that in my home country, it's a lot easier to manage that sort of thing, which obviously, you know, the US is not my home country. So I'm going to have to pay more for storage and 3PLs and all the rest of it, managing that constant fluctuation. So I did the numbers, and it is actually cheaper for me to fly it in on a sort of just-in-time basis, at least for the short term, because that's the other thing. Sometimes it's not about always doing things for I'm going to do that forever. It's more, let's just have a breather and monitor the costs and then see whether you've got something going on that works.
Yeah. Now, I didn't get to see your presentation right now because I was recording some podcasts in here, but I know like one of the things you talk about a lot is branding. And I imagine actually that's one of the reasons why you don't have to shut your business down, and why, you know, some people might have been listening right now and thought to themselves, wait a minute, if she has very close knockoffs who are selling for $25 and her price is $90, you know, it's not a matter of, oh, maybe US is just a little bit more profitable than Canada, you know, like that's a huge gap, you know, right there. But you're obviously not fighting on price. And I would imagine one of the main reasons why you're able to succeed is because of your strong brand.
100%, because we grew in the UK 30%.
Grew even at that price. You know, it's not like the Chinese sellers are not selling in the UK.
I've got loads of Chinese sellers chasing me in the UK, but the difference is that the brand is better known and is better trusted. And therefore, you know, they and also I think there is an element, you know, of the fact that I think, you know, whichever country you're based in, you know, people like to support a more local business.
Sure.
So there is an element of that. So if you're a US seller in the US, I do think sometimes, you know, you need to make more of that, because actually, you know, US citizens are going to want to support a US business. Yeah.
So talk a little bit more about that. It's about, you know, all of this can be considered part of your branding. You know, where is it manufactured? You know, like, are you really targeting your target avatar? You know, what did you talk about in your presentation today that you can maybe share with the audience about some things that will help them to? Well, one of
the biggest things was the fact that I do think a lot of Amazon sellers don't really have a brand. They just have a name for a business, or a name for something that they use, and they don't really have what I'd call a true brand. And they don't always. I think sometimes also existing only on Amazon makes you lose perspective on, you know, how normal businesses work, like businesses that aren't based on Amazon. And so, you know, a lot of businesses, I mean, I think throughout life, people buy from people. And I think that's so important to remember that even on Amazon, one of the reasons why Amazon focuses so heavily on A+ listings, and now they're bringing in the premium A+ and all the rest of it, because Amazon knows, right? I you know, you've known me quite a few years now, and I've always banged on about brand. I've always banged on about having a story. Tell your story. It doesn't have to be your story necessarily. It could be the product story. But you need to have something that differentiates you. And even then, I mean, I was chatting to someone at the conference earlier on, and I was saying the thing is that sometimes it's not even the fact that you're selling different products, it's the way that you curate them, right? So it's the collection of products that you've chosen to sell under your brand name says something. Because like if I said, right, Bradley, like we're both going to do kitchenware, I guarantee you that both of us would choose different products. If you said, right, you've got to choose 10 products and, you know, off you go, I would choose 10 different, or we might have some crossover, but, you know, we might both have a garlic crusher. For example, I used a garlic crusher as an example in my talk about how even a garlic crusher can have a story.
We call that garlic press.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there we are. Thank you for enlightening. But the whole point is that, you know, even the fact that individual people are actually running these businesses means that there will be something individual about that business. So it's finding that story effectively and finding the why. I'm always really quite fascinated by the whys of business. So for example, you look at things like Airbnb and Uber and things like that, and the why was because people didn't want to pay the stupidly high taxi rates. The why was the two guys who did Airbnb was because of the fact they didn't have enough money to rent a hotel room, and they needed somewhere to stay, and they couldn't afford all the other options. So they came up with the concept of Airbnb. Even things like Ring, you know, like the doorbell company, you know, that originally came, that wasn't the story there, it's a reinvention of something traditional, but they've used technology that's available to revolutionize an existing product. It could also just be the way in which something is communicated with or handled, like with the customers, so making the customers more engaged with the product. So, for example, one of the things I'm doing this year is I'm going to be doing an app which helps babies sleep through the provision of white noise. And, that's an add-on product, but I won't be selling it on Amazon, obviously. But the thing is it's kind of something where, again, it can become a marketing tool. It can become like something that you can, give to people. There's other, I'm all about added value. Like, where can you give added value, and hopefully try and give added value where it doesn't cost you very much.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I think that helps you expand also to different marketplaces, be it, like when you started in UK, then went to US. I know we were talking about the potential of UAE, and you were saying, oh yeah, I've got some customers down there and stuff. So talk to me about that. Like, how can you say something like that? Is that because you know people from social media who have bought your product, or you look at the addresses of where people buy your products? But how can you say, oh yeah, I've got customers there, when I'm ready to launch there, I can hit them up and they'll promote it? Like, how can you do that?
Yes, and almost yes. Okay. So fundamentally, one of the other things I always bang on about, and I banged on about it in my presentation, is I do believe that any real brand or product business should have a website. There's two reasons for that, so I'm going to just go off on one tangent slightly.
Go ahead.
But the main reason for it is that, for example, I've been out of stock for two of my best-selling products for the last couple of months because we've had issues getting stuff in from China, blah, 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 and we had delays on the line, etc., etc. So what I'm able to do with my website is take pre-orders. You can't do that on Amazon because if you don't have the stock, you can't sell. Literally, that's it. You're done. So I've generated, I've lost, my sales are down for the month in comparison to last year on Amazon, and they're up, not as much as they would be, but they're still significant enough money coming in on people who are prepared to hand over their money on the basis that the product will come. We tell them the dates and then we ship it. And so therefore the benefit of having a website, for example, is I know exactly how much traffic my website gets from the UAE. I can literally see it down to like the almost like city level, because like the analytics now on things like Shopify is absolutely fascinating. So I did a breakdown of like all the visitors that come from outside of the UK, and there's some significant numbers. Also, yes, the other thing with the UAE is that you have a lot of expats. Now, the one thing that expats lack is family, because they're living outside of their home country. Yep. So when they have a baby, they're much more reliant on external sources. So they're much more reliant on things like baby sleep experts. They're much more reliant on gadgets and things that can help the baby sleep. We've got influencers. There's actually a few baby sleep experts starting up in the UAE. And at the moment, I can't, it's really frustrating. The most frustrating thing for me is when someone says they can't buy my product, at a reasonable price, because I don't want to be like charging 25, 30 quid for a courier, which I do, and people will pay it. But I don't really want to be. I want them to get it at a price that works for them and in a time span that works for them. So the reason the UAE, I've been sort of thinking about it for many, many, many years. And in fact, I had way back in the day, like 2010, I had a distributor in the UAE. And I've had retailers in the UAE before. And I think the main issue is that they don't do any marketing. Whereas I'm happy to do the marketing. So we're happy to make contact with the influencers. We're happy to, and the good thing is we get people contacting us because it works both ways. And then we can say, oh, actually, yes. And we're selling on Amazon. So it gives us the opportunity to say, yeah, we can help you.
Sure. Really interesting. And another thing that I found, or I probably knew this, but my memory is so bad, but that you are an unexpected expert in things that have to do with like trademarks and stuff like that. So what is something that you think the average listener might not know or might wow them, like, wow, I didn't know that?
Well, one of the issues I think that people, in fact, I was chatting to someone at dinner last night about it, is that quite often people worry about the fact that a particular brand name may have been registered already. Now, that's not necessarily a problem because, for example, McDonald's Farms, now this is a slightly like random, not realistic example, but the principle's the same. So you've got McDonald's restaurants and then you've got McDonald's Farm. Now, we know obviously McDonald's restaurants probably have got their own farm, but if they didn't, then there's absolutely no reason why you can't trademark McDonald's as a farm, because it's a different category. And those categories are actually quite important. So, for example, if you've got a rubber duck company and you wanted to call it, you can't call it rubber ducks, it's too generic, but say you wanted to call it sort of yellow ducky or something like that, right? and then somebody else was doing, you're making toys, and they're called Yellow Ducky, and then someone wanted to do a swimwear brand called Yellow Ducky. Well, actually, you could have the two existing. Like, you wouldn't necessarily want to. This is the other thing. Sometimes it's not advantageous to actually have a similar brand name to somebody who's already established. But if they're in a completely different industry, so if you had a Yellow Ducky that was a truck company, right, and you're doing Yellow Ducky toys, no one's going to confuse the two. It's really not going to be like a case of someone's going to go to the Yellow Ducky truck company and think, oh my goodness, where are my ducks, or toys or whatever. So there is that. And there's also, the other thing is, I think, is that, people don't really know how to search for that sort of thing. And it's not that hard. The USPTO, the US Patent and Trademark Office, has actually got some really good search functionality. There's also the WIPO, which is World Internet, because I'm always suggesting the other thing you need to do is you need to make sure that your trademark isn't taken in another country. So we have it quite a lot. I tend to talk about it in reverse, which is you might have a brand in the UK, and then actually someone may have already filed for that trademark in the US. So there's no point really building up a brand in the US, if you're then hoping to go to the US, because it's going to be too difficult, especially if they're in a similar sort of environment. So it is really, and that works both ways. So I would say even in the US, if you're thinking of expanding to Europe or to the UK or Australia or whatever, do a bit of due diligence search online, because you will be able to find it, and make sure you use a VPN to go looking through on Google in local countries, because the other thing also you don't necessarily know is there was one brand that I know of in the baby industry, and if you Google it, it actually means, it's in Dutch, it actually means the bits of shit that hang off the back of a sheep's bottom. Okay. So I'm not being funny, but I don't want that as a brand name. They have, and it doesn't seem to impact on them at all. But the thing is you do want to see whether there's any weird colloquialisms or weird slang and things like that. Plus, the other thing is people get very oh my goodness, what am I going to do? What am I going to do about trademarking internationally? And there is something called the Madrid Protocol. And the Madrid Protocol, once you've actually trademarked in a country that follows the Madrid Protocol, which, by the way, includes America and China, the EU, Australia, all the big players, most of the places you would want to trademark. Once your trademark has been accepted, and obviously this is why the due diligence is really important to make sure that you haven't got McDonald's restaurants anywhere else. Is you can use the Madrid Protocol to register in those other countries within a 6-month period of your trademark being approved in your home country. And it's a lot less, and you don't need to use lawyers, because otherwise you'd have to literally go out to each country and then trademark it. So I always say to people, sort of think big in terms of, and think safe. So, for example, it's super important to have a trademark in China, because in China, it's a first to file. It's first to file, whereas in other countries it's first to use. I think the US is first to use. So the problem is that you could have been using a trademark for example, I think in the UK we're first to file. I think in the US it's first to use. So somebody would not be able to probably register my trademark unless, because I would probably know about it, and therefore it would come up and I'd say, well, hang on a minute, I've been trading in the US for this amount of time. Yeah. And I think I had to also do the same in Canada. I had to actually show how long I'd been trading for. But in the UK, you don't have to have been trading at all. So if I wanted to, I could literally take Helium 10 and I could trademark that in the UK. If you haven't done, because no one else is using it, there's no reason why it wouldn't be. And, so by thinking with using the Madrid Protocol, especially in the early days of when you're just doing your trademark, it's expensive. But the thing is if you think you're going to go if you're producing in China, you should definitely do it. And if you think you're going to go into the US or into the UK or EU, it's actually quite a cost-effective way of getting a trademark. So
educated me about a lot of stuff there. Now, before we get into your last strategy, a couple of questions I've been asking guests. So you've obviously been using Helium 10 for a while, and I remember from the very first time I met you, there's just a lot of stuff that you don't know how to do, but from the stuff that you do know how to do and that you do use, what is your favorite tool in Helium 10 that you feel gives you the most value, and why does it give you value?
It's it's Cerebro, where you go in and look at the keywords.
Yeah, you put the ASIN in and get the keywords. Yes.
So I love that one.
Do you know what language Cerebro is?
Oh, is it Greek?
No, it might have some Greek in it, but it's the literal translation or the literal spelling
brain, isn't it?
is brain. Yeah, for Spanish.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's definitely one of my favorites. And then I also I get the marketplace alerts and things like that. And I particularly like every time I change my own, or if a price changes, I love that coming in because Amazon quite often starts selling my products in other places, and it's useful to know what they're charging when they're doing it. And also, it's a sanity check for me. Like when for example, the other day, big time, I'm launching a new product and I'm making it a variation of another product, and I accidentally put on the old product the new title. So I was accidentally selling the new product before it had launched because the old product was still live. So it was only when I got an email from Helium 10 saying my title had changed, and I was like, So I ran into the back of like Seller Central. Oh my God, I think it was only about 20 orders. And then I'm like trying to change the title. Got it changed finally. And that was a bit of a lifesaver as well.
All right. So alerts and Cerebro. Wish list for something that maybe we do it and you just don't realize it, or something that you think that we don't have that would really make your life easier.
Well, the SKU economics, I'm going to be looking for that.
Okay.
So I don't know, we have to have a chat afterwards and we'll have a look. Because the problem is with the Amazon Seller Central version is that it's not exportable. So I literally had to sit there and like I was doing screenshots and then moving and copying like a picture into an Excel spreadsheet.
You know, for you with 13 SKUs, maybe not so bad, but imagine somebody else.
I'm thinking, feeling the pain. But also, if I wanted to do regular updates, like where am I now? I don't want to have to go through that every single time. So I will be very interested to see, because SKU economics, honestly, I'm a bit obsessed with it at the moment because it's so useful in being really granular. Like literally, like that SKU has spent X amount of money on sponsored ads. Yeah. That bit has generated that amount of profit, and it tells you all the returns, like, you know, everything. And so it really gave me some, like I was saying, some really good knowledge into what the business was actually doing versus what I thought it was doing.
Okay. All right. Your last 30, 60, I know for you, it might be hard. So maybe 90 second tip of the day. Could be about trademarks, could be about branding, could be about the best pubs to go to in Britain. I mean, any possible subject that you are an expert on.
Okay. I'm not going to go down the pubs route.
Okay.
But no, I think my top tip is have a website outside of Amazon. Have some way where you can sell, because we are all at the mercy of Amazon. And all that needs to happen is we've got some new regulations going into the EU. That's going to impact on all the US sellers, which is new labeling laws. And if your product is not compliant, Amazon will shut your listing down on December the 13th, 2024. Oh. Literally. So it's absolutely vital that you have another way to sell. That's obviously in the EU, but like this, that could happen in any market. Sure, we just don't know what's going to happen. And the thing is, you know, if you have all your eggs in Amazon's basket, then you're not really giving yourself an opportunity to do anything other than be at the mercy of Amazon. And, you know, whilst I do love Amazon, obviously, at the same time, I don't think it's healthy to be that involved with any one person at all. So it's really good to be able to sort of spread the risk a little bit. And as I say, then that gives you the opportunity to do more things off Amazon, which then actually tend to drive more traffic. So my website increased by 30% last year. Amazon increased by 30% because I do encourage my customers to go to Amazon if that's what they want to do. And then there's also a customer who doesn't want to buy on Amazon because they don't like the concept, they don't believe in it. And there's a definite movement. A lot of people, unfortunately, they don't understand how Amazon works, and they think everything that's being sold on Amazon is being sold by Amazon. And I often have to explain to them, like, hang on a minute, I'm selling on Amazon. So by you not shopping on Amazon, you're actually not helping me. Yeah. You know, and they don't get it. So anyway, have a website and make sure you've got a really good, strong, like, about us, like, page, which sort of tells people why you're doing this. Awesome.
Well, Cara, thank you so much. I have no doubt that you're going to be make it to 5 episodes next year. You'll have some good stories and teach us some new vocabulary words as well. You know, one of the things I like about you is that you're not here to sell something, and not that people nothing bad. You know, I have influencers and people who have service providers, and they push their website. Oh, great. You know, that's why part of the reason why we're all here. But you know, you're just like helping people. You know, you speak and you have no agenda. So we're not going to say, hey, go to CaraSayer.com, and there's no
CaraSayer.com, but I have nothing on there.
But I'm sure people would like to hear from you. So, like, do you know where the next speaking? Are you speaking at $1 Billion Seller Summit or going there?
I'm not allowed to because my daughter's doing her big exams this year. So I've had
no $1 Billion Summit this year.
So no international travel until after July. But I'm going to the European Seller Conference in Prague because I'm allowed to stay within in March 13th to the 16th, I think it is.
Okay.
And I'm not speaking, but I'm going to go along as a participant. And I'm really looking forward to it, actually, because I've never been before. So
I love that conference. I spoke at it last year. Shivali is going this year. I won't be going this year, but make sure to go there if you guys want to go to Prague. It's in March.
It's a beautiful city as well.
Yes. Oh, and there's a really great, amazing pizza place called Johnny's Pizza. I'll let you know where it's at. Yeah, really great.
Me and Shivali can go out and have some pizza.
All right. Well, Cara, thank you so much for joining us and coming out here from across the pond.
Indeed. A bit of a bumpy landing it was yesterday, but yes.
That was a little rough here in Frankfurt. I kept me a little awake there. But anyways, thank you so much for coming. And I can't wait next year to see what you've been up to.
All right. Take care.